So it's now 6:15 and we're going to reconvene the Brattleboro Select Board meeting. We convened at 5:15 to conduct, we did 4 interviews for the CPCC committee, and we appreciate everyone's applications. I asked them, but I'll ask again. John, was this meeting properly warned?
Yes, Ian, it was.
Excellent. So we will first go to approving the minutes. So I take a motion on that.
I will motion that we approve the minutes from the meeting of April 18th, 2023.
Excellent. Peter has made a motion to approve the minutes of April 18th, 2023. Board members, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's going to carry 5-0. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is chair remarks. And believe it or not, no remarks this evening. So I'm going to hand it over to John for agenda item 4, manager's comments.
Great. Thank you, Ian. So a few things tonight. First thing I want to do is extend thanks from the town to Paul and Kiki Freed, who have for many years maintained the island out here on Upper Main Street. And they have now passed the baton to the Brattleboro Rotary Club, who has offered to take on the maintenance out there. And they've done a nice job already this spring to get that spruced up. So second thing I want to mention was that 2 of the 3 new firefighters have started on the job yesterday, and they'll be trained and brought up to speed and be an asset to their shift by July 1st. There is a 3rd candidate, or maybe a couple candidates who are in the works. So we should have all 3 very soon. So I also wanted to announce that Matt Casabona has been promoted to captain on Platoon 1, and he has been with the Brattleboro Fire Department for 9 years. So congratulations to Matt. Finally, on the fire department front, there will be an open house at the Central Fire Station on Saturday, May 13th from 9 to 1. And I would ask everyone to please consider coming out to see the operation and thank the firefighters for all they do above and beyond in our community. Groundworks has asked us to continue allowing them to use the transportation center through mid-May while they complete their transition. We've agreed to continue the use of that site for a pop-up drop-in center as long as it's supervised through May 12th. And also to be part of the conversation for possibly finding a location for a longer-term peer support drop-in center as they have those conversations moving forward. Many of you may have noticed that the downtown area has been getting plastered with handbills and posters. DPW crews have been spending a good deal of time and effort to clean this up. And our hope is that people could use social media or other means in the future to announce their events and perspectives. Finally, I wanted to remind everyone that this Friday is the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance's first gallery walk of the year from 5 to 9 p.m. And I hope to see many of you there to celebrate lots of the wonderful things about Brattleboro. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much, John. We're going to move on to agenda item 5, which is select board comments and committee reports. So board members, any comments or committee reports? Franz.
Thank you, Ian. Those of you who've been paying attention the past couple of weeks might perhaps remember that I'm having office hours at the library on Wednesdays from 4:30 to 6:30. And I have to say, it's been gratifying, and I've had some very good discussions with people who've showed up. And I also want to say that first couple of weeks have been sort of the warm-up phase, but we're now getting into serious business. And I refer in part to today's agenda for this meeting, which is the sort of opening discussion on our options for emergency medical services in town. There's been a lot of interest in that over the past getting on a year and a half now. So I hope the people who have been very concerned appropriately so, about that issue will take advantage of my office hours and come in and start the process of the really intensive public input that I think is needed to address EMS issues and other issues in town as well. I don't mean to restrict it to that. So this is your opportunity. Please come in and talk to me. In fact, I'm going to also set myself up this Friday morning from 8 to 10 at the Works on Main Street. So if people want to come in there and talk to me and, you know, for whatever reason, Wednesday afternoon is not a good time, maybe Friday morning's better. It's all still, you know, we're just feeling our way through it. But again, this is an important opportunity, I think, for people in town to have input into some important decisions that'll be made by this group over the next 5 months. So I hope to see many people there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Franz. Other board members? Yep. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is public participation. This is opportunity for public to speak on items that are not on the agenda or to request. Oh, we don't have a consent agenda tonight. So anyone in the public wish to speak? Yes. I'm just going to look to. Yeah. I think I saw Dale's hand first. So, Dale, I'm going to interrupt you. It's come to my attention that you may want to speak on a matter involving municipal personnel. And that has a process that you can pursue that starts at the HR director's office and includes involving the town manager. But here in the public participation is not the venue to have that discussion. And we're not going to talk about that tonight. But
Wait a minute.
let me finish. I want to invite you to speak on any other item that's unrelated to that this evening. And we invite you to speak now. But if you want to speak on that, we're not going to hear from you. So
On what?
I think we both know what you want to talk about. So,
You sure?
yep. So if you want to speak on something else, we can talk about anything else you want to, but we're not going to talk about that.
Okay. Bob.
I'm
No,
I'm not going to get into a debate. I'm not going to get into a debate with you about this. I'm not.
It's a state
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
at
I'm-
this point.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not going to get into a debate with you. So it's either if you I'm not going to get. Okay. Thank you. I'm not going to get into a debate with you about it. Thank you. Okay. So if there's anyone else that would like to speak, yes.
Yeah, Steve Zaluzny. I just have a question.
Yes, Steve.
You know, in the past, the Reformer, maybe other papers have had a police log in there. And so that's something I'd like to see. Is that, do you know if that's been in there, just sporadically or continuously at all?
I'm going to let you finish your comment and then we can answer
Okay,
your question.
I'll finish the whole thing if
Thank
you want me to.
Yes.
So basically, I would like to see that is my point. And the reason being transparency of what's going on in the community. I think it as an aspect of safety for the community. And it is a barometer of how the community is doing. So that's basically it. I would like to see it for those reasons, and I think it's important.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. I believe we do publish a police log. Has that?
Yes, periodically there is one published.
Okay.
And then we also have the reports to the select board from the police department on a monthly basis.
Is that the Reformer?
One's the Reformer and the other is one that comes in our backup material for on a monthly basis.
Police department is charged with getting that to.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. I'll look to Zoom if I don't see any hands on Zoom. Anyone else wish to? Yes, Dick, please.
Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. I had a conversation with John. So John, thank you for mentioning that topic, which was you can leave for 3 days in space and when you come back, it's the same old place. The graffiti and the postings that have been downtown have been just outrageous. And I want to compliment the highway department. I had a conversation with Dan and Peter late last year talking about their effort to work on cleaning that up. I also recommended to John that we possibly bring the ordinance forward to make some changes to the ordinance to make it more penal and to be more inclusive of who we can go after, versus you hang up a sign and it's a venue, then we go after the venue where the event is happening. Because more often than not, we don't see the people who are putting up those signs. And if you take a walk down Main Street, there's stuff posted all over public property and private property. And that's really a no-go because people are really working hard to maintain the downtown. A year ago, May 17th, I was before you asking you to put cameras on the agenda. And a lot has transpired in a year. More crime, more break-ins. I spoke with 2 people today. One person showed me footage of their business. They had cameras where someone was trying to break in. They weren't successful. And this happened Sunday night. I had a store owner who said his business, twice within the last couple of months, they've attempted to break in downtown. And given what I have read, several businesses still broken into, and nobody mentioned it, but there was a boulder thrown through the library window. That's not a rock, it was a boulder. And I know it wasn't me because I couldn't lift that thing up when I saw the picture of it. And that is absolutely disgraceful. And I think the time has come to say, you know what? We need to protect our municipal buildings, and we have a responsibility to the partnership of the buildings, not only downtown, but wherever cameras are needed. And I believe you need to have that conversation. When you had it last November, you okayed the cameras in the transportation center. And I was saying we should put them downtown. And nobody said anything about putting cameras downtown. Chief Hardy supports having cameras throughout the town. And I believe you need to revisit that because there's a lot of bad things happening downtown. It's great to come here and talk about all the wonderful things, but there's a lot of damage and mayhem going on in our downtown that we need to address. And my last thing, the last thing, can you tell me what the status is of when the cameras are going to be put in to the transportation center? I know the bid was awarded, but when are they going in?
Yep. Thank you. Do we have an answer on the last question?
I believe it's in process and should be done this month, or should be certainly started this month. I'm not sure if it'll be completed by the end of May, but as soon as the vendor can get to it.
Great. Anyone else wish to speak on public participation? Going once, going twice. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is new business A, which is the Fire-EMS project discussion. So are we inviting the?
No, I think we'll just talk about the project plan, and
absolutely,
we won't get into the technical side.
So board, on March 21st, the select board directed the administration to pursue a parallel track when it came to the future for Fire-EMS in the town of Brattleboro. And that included essentially one track where that service would be done by the municipality, and another track where that service would be done by a third party. And there's a couple of different variations of the third party system that could be proposed. We then asked the town manager and town staff to come back to us with sort of a more thorough plan of what that's going to look like. And tonight is the good work of John and the rest of municipal staff on sort of proposing a plan for how that process is going to go forward. And so I'm going to hand it over to John to explain the memorandum that was prepared for this a little bit in detail for both the board and the public. And then we'll look for a motion and then have discussion. So I'll hand it over to John.
Great. Thanks, Ian. So before you tonight is the project plan for the Fire-EMS transition. And our hope was to lay this all out so that people know what to expect and when to expect, and to also know when they can help be part of the learning process together with the staff, the select board, and the public. And I really want to emphasize that at least the staff's intent is to have a very strong intent to listen and take feedback as we step through this. And I wanted to just talk about some of those steps with you tonight. And our kind of basic plan is to have a formal presentation at each of the select board meetings for the second meeting of the month for May, June, July, and August. And if you look at on page 10 of your packet, there is a table that really sets this out, and it kind of groups it between like sort of what are all the tasks that need to be done to complete the project, and then how does that look on the parallel tracks, one looking at the municipal possibility and one looking at the contracted EMS possibility. And so I would just draw to your attention a few of the things that are important on the municipal track. And that is, for example, so starting next meeting on May 16th, the staff will bring information about potential revenues if we were to move forward with an option like that. Then on June 20th, we'll analyze startup expenses related to that. And on July 18th, we'll go over the various operating models that an approach like that could take. Then, so that's the municipal track. Then on the contracted EMS track, some of the key things there are, again, on the next select board meeting on May 16, we would like to share a draft request for information. So that is what we would propose to go out to the universe of potential contractors and ask for their feedback and their help for the information we need to develop a request for proposals that would come later in the summer. So our hope would be then to take feedback on those questions that we would be asking the contractors, and then publish that request out to the world on June 1st. Then when those replies come in and we have that information to start to build a request for proposals, a way to go ask contractors like, how would you propose to provide EMS services to the town? We'd go over that on the second meeting in July. So what did we hear back? And also, how is the staff taking that information and translating it into specifications and requirements for a request for proposals? And so that we would take feedback from you and the public at that point. And then our hope would be to publish that request for proposals out to the world on August 1st. Then when those proposals come in, we would like to compare those options with the board and with the public on September 5th. And not more or less for clarifying and to answer questions, and then bring all of the parallel tracks back together at a public forum to be held on September 12th, where our sort of our thought there was that would be more like a working session with the public to go over all the alternatives. What are we missing? What do we like? What do we dislike? How are we analyzing the pros and cons of the different approaches, to help inform the staff in order to bring back an item to the select board on September 19th, where we would hope you would make a decision about which track we should pursue. And then we would proceed to implement that into the fiscal 25 budget in November, and move forward with whatever budget approvals we might need at representative town meeting in March. And then finally implementing that transition, whichever track was chosen, for a start date of July 1st in 2024. And then the last thing I will mention is that at the request of the board, we've put together on page 11 a little graphic of this timeline, which we hope to use in order to go out to social media and solicit additional feedback from maybe members of the public that don't want to come to the board to talk about their thoughts, but may want to reach out to staff in different formats. So that's the hope with that, as well as other venues like Franz mentioned earlier. So that's a summary of what our proposed project plan is, but we're totally open to any thoughts that you have about doing that differently or emphasizing one thing versus another. So
Great. Thank you very much, John, for that presentation. Board, can I get a motion?
Well, exactly what are we motioning then?
Yes. So as is sort of the procedure we're trying to implement this year, we'll take a motion now so that we frame the conversation so that we can and then we can always amend, vote it down and vote on something else. But we want to start a conversation with a motion.
So I'll make the motion.
Yep,
that
it's
we-
right in your yeah, you got it.
To accept the parallel track Fire-EMS transition project plan as presented.
Excellent. So Peter has made a motion. Let's have some discussion first on the board and then we'll hear from the public. And I'll just remind everybody, obviously this is a very big discussion about a lot of things. And so what we're talking about right now is the proposed process and the schedule. And if we want to, how we like the schedule and if we want to change how that is. Getting more granular than that is not going to be particularly productive and is really not what we're talking about tonight. So let's try to keep it to this so that we can keep the conversation moving and it be productive. So select board members first, questions, comments for John or about the proposal. Liz?
I am in favor of this plan. I think it's shows transparency with the public and a methodical, realistic program for evaluation.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Other board members? Yeah, Franz?
Thank you, Ian. I agree that it's a very good plan. I like the way it's laid out. I think it's a good time frame. The one concern I have is whether there are sufficient opportunities for public input. I noticed that public input is mentioned, well, a total of 8 times in the plan as diagrammed here. Most of those, however, are at select board meetings where discussion is limited necessarily. Nonetheless, people certainly have an opportunity at select board meetings to come and tell us what they think. There's also a public forum to be held in September where presumably there'd be more wide-ranging discussion. And I think it's important that we highlight and recognize and actively solicit input in other ways, whether it's, personal contact, as I was talking about earlier, or through electronic media or, whatever the ways are that people can give us their input. Now's the time to start that process. And so a lot of this depends on the interest level and the initiative of folks out there in our audience, in the town. And so I ask people to take this opportunity from now through September to let us know what you're thinking about this, make suggestions, include your independent analysis of the important variables that we're looking at, so that we can make the best decision possible when September rolls around. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Franz. Other board members? Daniel?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a good, sensible, methodical, reasonable plan. And the piece that I like most about it is that it's an opportunity for everybody to be equally informed. And so, town staff have been working real hard to move us towards having accurate as you can with potential revenues. And so on May 16th, when town staff are bringing us good, solid information about potential revenues, it'll be an opportunity for the board to talk about, what they observe, what questions they have, and for the public to do so as well. I think that, yes, coming to the select board meeting is one place that a person could engage with this material, but I think it's also important to remember that there's more to public engagement than folks who are actually physically here in the room. Folks can access the materials online from the Friday before the select board meeting. Our press usually report pretty well on this stuff as well. So there are many ways in which people can get the information that's presented at a select board meeting without having to be physically here. And I think it's also worth kind of remembering that all of this information that's then put out into the public stays on our town website for people to access at a time that's convenient for them. So I hope that during the course of this next several months, we as a body will get adequately informed in order to make a responsible decision. And all the members of the public who are interested in this issue can become equally informed. And so we're all on the same page. And then I really hope that we'll arrive in a place where we're making a good, responsible decision that's largely understood.
Great. Thank you very much, Daniel. Yeah, Peter.
So I was pleased to see the graphic, as I think this will help us widen the knowledge of this plan, which I think is a good plan. I don't want to use the word methodical because it's been used quite a bit. So, but I think it is it's an easy plan to follow. My question is, if somebody wants to write a letter, send an email, how does that get entered into the conversation? That, I guess, would be a question I would have for John. Is that something you can answer now?
Sure. Yeah. So the staff's intent would be to keep track of any feedback that we get from the public through social media or other means, whether it's an email or other information that comes to our attention. And so that was included in the information that we would bring to the select board, say at the next meeting, or in summary, finally at the end when we're comparing options.
Okay, so, but when you say social media, it's not like the town posted this graphic and then people started to comment under it. That's not a formal communique, right?
I don't think we have comments enabled in our Facebook.
What's that?
I don't think we have comments.
That saves that question then. All right, but so emails, letters encouraged. I would encourage folks to do that, to enter these into the public record, because I understand that sometimes coming here might be a little bit of a hardship for people. So that is just another way to reach out to a body of this board or town officials.
Thank you very much, Peter. I echo my fellow board members' thoughts on this. I think I mostly want to just give some appreciation to John and town staff for taking a fairly sort of difficult task of building a plan for multi-track process that involves transparency, public participation, and a fast-moving timeline to ensure that we have sufficient time to consider all of the information before making a decision in September. I think you've accomplished that. I think the one thing I would note is the public forum being held on September 12th. When I first looked at it, felt late in the process, but it's also after all of the information has been received. And so that is going to be a really effective time for us to have a really robust discussion in a public forum, because we're going to be able to be speaking about all the information that the select board's been given over the last 3 months about this potential multi proposals and plans for EMS in the future. So, but I definitely echo my fellow board members on the fact that we need to ensure that we're pushing out this timelines, that we're ensuring that people are seeing it and know when they can come in and see a select board meeting or come to the public forum to discuss it. So if there aren't other initial comments, I'll look to the public and see if there's any questions or comments there. Yeah, Daniel.
I guess just one final thing. So like this graphic is nice and clear. I would say as we're getting to the meeting where we're going to be talking about potential revenues, let's make sure that we link to where people can find that information on the town's website as well.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. John.
I would just add to that our intent is to continue to develop illustrations like this for the various points along and use that as a way to drive emails or letters or other feedback for ways that people might want to engage. So.
Great. All right, let's turn it over to the public. Anyone have think I saw Kate's hand first. Kate, I haven't seen you in the last 2 select board meetings. And I got worried.
I'll tell you what's been going on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't
I'll
mean.
save it for another.
I was just joking.
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I was watching you on TV though. Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I just have 2 questions. The first one is, where do the AP Triton 4 options fit into this, if anywhere? And I don't know if that's farther down on the timeline. Because I'm just trying to figure out how you decide, or when you decide, what the different options are. And second question is, it's well known, it's been well documented in the media that EMS providers around the state are having real challenges now, like surviving. And I know the legislature's looking at it. So I'm wondering if you folks would consider having a couple of EMS providers from around the state come and talk to the board and to the public about what those challenges are. 7 Days did a really good article where they interviewed people. Last month, Vermont Public Radio had a really good Vermont edition where they had the woman who is the executive director of the Middlebury area EMS, as well as Will Moran from the state. I think it's important that we understand what the challenges are. And they may tell us, here's what we did to overcome these challenges. But I don't think that we can operate as if we have a bubble over our town, that we're not going to face the same challenges that these other communities are seeing. So, and that's sort of the one thing that's not on this list, is hearing from other EMS providers. And I'm not talking about Golden Cross or Rescue. It's people that don't have the skin in the game that can come and say, here's what's happening in our community with EMS. Because I don't think we can make a full decision unless that's to me is an important part of the equation. So I hope you would consider that too.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. I'm going to tackle the first question. So the AP Triton, for those following along at home, there were 4 models that were sort of discussed at the end of the AP Triton report. The first was fully municipal EMS. The second was hybrid EMS, essentially the model that we have currently. Third was a town-specific third-party EMS, and fourth was regional EMS. And I think the question from Kate is like, sort of, where does that fit in here? So I think for the 2 third-party versions of it, that happens in the transfer from the request for information to the request for proposals, because we're going to get information about whether we're looking for regional, and I'm going to ask John to stop me if I'm getting this wrong, regional versus town-specific third party. So that will help us sort of delineate between those 2 models, or maybe we hear from both.
Yeah, so our initial thinking on this, and it's still under development, so this is helpful conversation, is that's some of the stuff that we're going to start asking in the request for information.
Yeah.
So if there were specifications in the request for proposals that were for a dedicated approach, would your firm be interested in? If there was a request for regional, would your firm be interested? And that kind of and may end up even being alternatives in the request for proposals that we'd be looking for, like what would it cost the town to do one approach versus another? So it really, I see the AP Triton report as a good guide for us, but now we're trying to make that fit Brattleboro's particular situation. So it may not look exactly like what's in the AP Triton report, but we're using that as guidance.
Mm-hmm. And then the third model being the full fire municipal EMS, and that's basically the other track here. And then the fourth model being the hybrid one. I guess it's not quite considered as much in this multi-track because we are currently operating in that system. And so I think we can use the data that we have with what we're doing currently and comparing that to the other 3. So I hope that answers Kate's first question. And then the second question, board thoughts. I think, Daniel.
Thanks. I think what Kate's asking for is like, are you willing to learn from other people providing this service around the state? And you referred to an article from 7 Days that I read and found interest in. And I think that what I took from that article was the challenge of regional services. And so what I would want us to be learning from is providers that are like, private providers that offer regional services, and providers that are towns, right? So we should learn from all of those people and hear about their challenges, because their challenges will inform, us and help us kind of, know what we're potentially getting into, or know what the, pitfalls are of different models. And so I think if we're going to learn, we should make sure we're learning from the whole kind of cohort of EMS providers, not just one particular kind.
Okay. Other thoughts on that? John, did you?
Yeah, I just a point of information on that question. So the staff have been reaching out to other towns throughout the state and to understand their experience with different approaches. And so our intent was to bring that sort of information, to incorporate that into our work and bring that back to you as well. I don't know if people are going to want to travel to come and talk at your meeting, but, perhaps online or something, if you wanted us to see if we could get people to, other EMS providers to come speak with us. I do want to be careful about not compromising the public bidding process, but we could look into that if that's something the board wants, and we don't have to decide that tonight either. That could be something that we see as time goes along.
Liz?
I just want to emphasize that, that article that Kate was referring to was very interesting, but it didn't talk that much about towns, large towns of Vermont that have their own fire EMS service. And I know that the chief has talked to many towns that do provide that. So we are getting the full range of information that we need, in addition to, the problems that a small town may have and a regional service. And so those are different agencies with different problems. And we're also studying what goes on in a town the size and scale of Brattleboro.
Other board members on that? I've kind of a thought on it, but.
I'm happy to hear from whatever sources of information can help us make the decision, and that would include other EMS providers throughout the state.
Yeah, I think my thought would be the whole purpose of this is to provide the select board, town staff, and the town with as much information and the best information possible to make the best decision for the town of Brattleboro when it comes to EMS services. And so maybe a good way to go about that would be, when you guys get information about something, you can from some resource, you can let us know in the backup material. And if somebody that you speak to feels like someone who should come and give some testimony to us, then let's invite them. And if the board reads some information that came from someone and we want to talk to them, we can tell town staff to invite them.
Great.
Does that work for the board?
Sure.
Okay. And Lenny, no, okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Judy. I think if my eyes are, they're getting worse every select board meeting. You're still muted.
There we go. I appreciate everybody's comments about providing as much public input as possible into this process. And I wonder if the select board could actually publish in the paper a list of these dates so that people know about it ahead of time and can plan for that with a list of what the agendas are, or could do that every month at the start of it when you're clearer about what the focus of that meeting will be. So I think it's really important for people to know where they can provide input, what the subject's going to be, and then either do that by email or actually coming to the meeting. The other thing I know is that when I originally did read the Triton report back in December, but then I went today to try and find it on the website to see if I could reread certain sections. And I couldn't find it. And then I called the town manager's office and she had a hard time finding it, but then finally did find it. And she agreed that it probably should be put in a more easy to access location on the town's website. So I hope that will happen. And I would also suggest, it's a long report, 103 pages. It would be great to have a couple of copies in the town office for people to come in and peruse, because even if it's not exactly what you're following, you are pretty much following the 4 options that were listed. And the amount of information that is provided in that about the different options, I think is really helpful for the town public to really appreciate, so that people are informed as they go through this process and try to provide input to you. And I was wondering, a second piece of that question is, when John was summarizing the options, he mentioned the hybrid model. And I wonder if the hybrid model is the one in Triton, was when Brattleboro had one ambulance, 24/7 and one just for 10 hours of the day. Was that the hybrid model that he's talking that the town is considering?
I'll let you finish your comment, Judy, unless that's where you've got.
Oh, okay, great. And then the other question is just, when is the date that you're going to actually send out information to people that might contract with the town? Was that after the June 20th meeting? Because the next meeting is potential interviews with contractor responders. So was that the time that you're going to send out to other people, whether they're other EMS, a regional service in this town? What is the date you're going to send that out?
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So a couple of different questions there. Let's talk with the last one first.
Yeah, so the goal would be to publish that on June 1st. And that would be following the feedback that we would get from the public and the select board on May 16th. So we'll be talking about the draft request for information on May 16th, and then trying to incorporate what we hear and then send that out on June 1st. On
the hybrid model is the model that we currently have. So that's,
yes.
So we have we work with a third party. Currently it's Golden Cross, and they partially staff our ambulances. We partially staff our ambulances with firefighters. They bill, and they are the ones who get them the income revenue from the providing the service. But we are helping staff the ambulances and getting the experience and the data information. So it doesn't really matter how many ambulances we have. 2 staffed, 1 backup ambulance. But more what makes it a hybrid model is that we have essentially 2 agencies working on the same, and I'm looking over at the people who actually know what they're talking about on this, working on the same ambulance. And that's what's the hybrid component. The AP Triton report. Yeah. Can we make sure that?
Yes, we'll make sure the AP Triton report is clearly available on the website.
And there was, about Daniel, did you have?
Yeah, I just want to say that the AP Triton report is easily accessible on the town's homepage. Admittedly, our website is not the greatest, but on the homepage on the right-hand side, there's a news column, and that's where we kind of tend to put the stuff that needs to remain easily, findable by somebody. And the link says EMS feasibility report, and then there's another link for AP Triton's presentation related to that report. So I went to brattleboro.org, I looked on the right, I clicked on EMS feasibility report, and up it popped.
Yep. So I do believe, though, that she was also looking for physical copies.
Yeah. So can we have a couple?
Yeah.
I think we actually do have some.
Yeah, I think we do too.
We have some around.
Yeah. And then the goal of putting this information out there in this agenda and in this backup material is to make sure that we're pushing it out into the community so people know. And so I would look to town staff to make sure that we're getting this out in every capacity that you think is appropriate, so that we can get as many people involved in hearing about this information as possible.
It's a goal.
Yep. Any other comments on that board before I move? Okay, Dick, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for this. This is very good. Judy asked one of the questions that I was going to ask John. You answered it partially. How are we going to, and it was nice to hear you're calling different places in the state. How are we going to advertise getting this out to the public? Because there's, you talked about, let's see, July 1, receive requests for information responses. And how big is the net going to be, and how are we going to get the word out that we're looking for potential EMS contractors? And so I'd like a little bit of clarity on that one. And then I have a follow-up.
If you want to just ask your other question now.
Well, usually the second question sometimes doesn't get answered. So that the one I asked was pretty easy. And the next one's pretty easy too.
I'll hear it now, Dick.
So the, so getting that clarified for me. And then is this just going to be an in-state search, or is this, how wide is this net going to be in terms of looking for contractors to come in? Are we going to look for people in Massachusetts, New Hampshire? Have you discussed that? How big that, or is this strictly a Vermont search?
Thank you. Is there another question?
Well, the last one is, you're bringing people in on July 18th, request for information responses and draft, request for proposals. Could you just clarify that a little bit for me?
Yes. Thank you very much. John, can I, so the three questions
Yes.
were, do you have them down or?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
great.
and they're all kind of related. So, appreciate that. So when we come on May 16th with the draft request for information, our plan was to also bring a solicitation strategy at that point. So as part of like what we would be asking, how would we ask it? And so that would be something then that we would like to get your feedback on, and like how best to do that. We would do that again on July 18th. So now we have the information back from potential vendors, and we want to incorporate that into a request for proposal. So that meeting, we'd review like, what did we hear from potential contractors? And then how are we going to incorporate that into writing a request for proposal? And we will have a draft request for proposal then. And how would we go about soliciting from there? And so what would be our solicitation strategy for the request for proposal? And really we haven't really talked about that yet, like how broadly we would do that. Our general goal would be to bring as many options to the board and the town as possible. So we'd love to get multiple proposals to allow you to have the best choices that you possibly could. That's the purpose of a public procurement process. I think, did I get it?
So it could be interstate. It could
it could be Vermont, it could be New Hampshire, it could be Massachusetts.
And can you clarify for Dick the timeline between the request for input and the request for proposal, and maybe what the difference is between the two?
Yeah, so the timeline, as I was talking about, the June 1st would be the goal to publish the request for information. That would then go out to the world, and potential contractors would respond to that, and we would receive requests we would receive responses by July 1st. So that gives potential contractors a whole month to look at those questions and to think about it and to provide good feedback for us to incorporate into the request for proposals. Then the request for proposals, the goal would be to have that issued on August 1st. So after we incorporated everything, got public feedback on how to do that, and we would then publish that August 1st. And our hope then would be to receive proposals back from contractors on August 29th, which allows us to stay on this timeline and still get to September with hopefully multiple options for you to consider.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Do town staff feel confident that the month of July is sufficient to take potentially quite a bit of information that they get from the request for information from potentially multiple vendors and incorporate it for a proposed request for proposals that would come before the select board for August 1st?
Yes, we think that the plan is sufficient. All of this, there's a lot of work in all of this, and that's part of the reason why we asked for the time to continue with Golden Cross to be able to do this. But we still, we believe that it will put us on track to get to the September decision-making timeframe. And yeah, I think July would be adequate.
Great. So thank you very much, Sean. Any other board member have a comment on that before I go over? Seeing none. Okay. And I see one hand left on Zoom. And is there anyone else in the room who wishes to speak? Yes, one more. Okay. So Bob, you are up.
So I'm going to make this very brief, and because I have to take a phone call.
Okay.
John mentioned it before that there was a concern about compromising the public bidding process, and so whether having the people who provide the information to you regarding that information piece, right, and then that information is then incorporated in the proposals. Does that give some individuals an unfair advantage?
No.
And there's also a little wording in the procurement manual that says that the description of the programs shouldn't contain features that are unduly restrict competition. So how do you deal with that? How do you do that balance? And I may have to, get your answer on the video because I need to be on this phone call.
Okay.
So, but that's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. John, do you sufficiently understand the question?
I think I understand. So, the question is how do we ensure a fair process, I think, here. And so that's very much on our minds. We don't think there's any, we think there is advantage to those who participate in the request for information part of this because they can help us shape what is going to be included in the request for proposal. If a contractor chose not to participate in the request for information, they wouldn't be able to have any input into what we're going to ask for proposals. So they would be at a disadvantage, but that's completely up to the contractors to decide whether they want to be part of this or whether they're not interested and it doesn't fit their business model. The request for proposal would be available to anyone to then submit a proposal. So it may be that people change their mind partway through this and then they want to submit a proposal to the town. And because we want as many options on the table as possible, we would definitely consider that. We won't make the request, in other words, we won't make the request for information restrictive to submitting a request for proposal.
Yeah.
If that's helpful.
Yes, absolutely. That makes sense. Liz?
I just want to mention that the responses to the request for information will be public. All the various responders, that information will be public so that there's no unfair or disadvantage to any bidders because all that information is in the public sphere and it can be used to assist them in preparing a bid for contract. For request for proposal.
Yeah. Franz.
Just one thought, which is that in terms of the solicitation strategy and managing the input that we get, I would think AP Triton is able to help us through some of that if we have questions or there's things that, how do we do this? How do we do that? So that, the process is fair and the solicitation goes out to the target that we want it to go out to.
Yes. AP Triton has continued to be extremely helpful they've looked at our project plan. They're looking at other part components of this and they continue to be a good resource for us. And we would also run that sort of thing by them. Yes, Franz.
Thank you.
Yeah. And they were very clear when they sort of last presented to us that they would be available. Okay, so I've got one more hand in the public and come on up and we'll hear back from the board if there's any other discussion on it.
Hi, Dora Bubalis, Brattleboro. So there's a couple of things, and I want to follow up on what Kate was talking about from the state level, because they are doing hearings on trying to figure out what to do about failing EMS service in the state. So what happens in a few years if the state decides to incentivize regionalization, just like they did with education, and the town's already invested a lot of money in doing this, and then maybe has to do an about face in doing, it depending on what method is picked. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm also going to say the same thing I've been saying for years. I hope when you're talking about revenues, you're also looking at long-term economic forecasts, because there's going to be cuts to everything. Maybe I leave Medicare alone, so maybe the Medicare payments are going to be the same, but Medicaid's going to get cut. Education's going to get cut. We don't have any purview over education in the town side, but it affects the town tax base. There's going to be taxes going up if you keep the same level of service, both state and local. So from a long-term forecast, that has to be looked into, and it has to be factored into any monetary value to what you're looking at, because expenses could get really high. And I hope, because I feel like it's one of the things that's never looked at, but it needs to be, because the long-term future at the federal level is not going to be good, and it's not going to be good for a while. So that's something we have to pay attention to, as one of the things, and I just want to say that one of the things that I feel has been lacking from this whole process for the last year, and I want to follow up on what Kate was saying about the getting additional information, because I feel like that's been missing. Yes, the fire chief did his own research with looking at, certain towns and speaking with people, but that's from the fire chief's perspective. And there needs to be a lot of different perspectives, and you guys all have to have all of that information.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Dora. Yeah, I think we sort of responded to the comment about, or the question about getting other feedback and testimony from people. And I think, I would also, I'll even ask pretty explicitly if we want to get anybody from the state about regionalization, or hear from them about that.
I mean, certainly, we want to do it's a good point, and we want to do a full risk analysis for you. So, what are the risks of one approach versus another? It's not easy to look in a crystal ball and say what's going to be the environment 10 years from now. But, that is something that the select board is going to have to factor in when you make a decision, for sure. And we would like to provide as much information to the public and to you to be able to make that decision as wisely as possible.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, John.
So could I don't know if this is appropriate, so let me just ask if this is appropriate to address what both Kate and Dora have kind of brought forth with the understanding of time constraints of these meetings. Is it appropriate to have maybe one or two members of this board do and have these conversations with other EMS services throughout the state? Do a report, a summation of that conversation, and submit that. Is that an appropriate thing for somebody to do on this committee?
I think that generally speaking, it's more like we would have municipal staff do that.
Okay.
Then present that to, like, the idea of like having someone as a representative of the town go, that it would be like a staff member, and then that would work its way into a memorandum for the select board to consider. I think that's kind of like more of how that would. I think if we wanted to really hear testimony, like it was important that the board heard it. It should be in a public meeting. So it should be.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I'm just
so-
saying for the benefit of time and to maybe put some concerns at ease if that was a possible venue. If it's not, then it's not. But
Yeah, I think that same goal being accomplished, but through municipal staff versus select board members is, I think that's kind of at least my understanding from being on the board. But Liz?
Well, I would just suggest that if staff met with an agency that had some relevant information for us, wrote up a memo, and we felt, oh, we really should talk to this person, we could talk to them on Zoom.
Yeah, we can pull them on. Yeah. And I think that and I spoke to this a little earlier, but I think what's really important, and I'm looking to John here, I think what's really important is that any information that we get from outside sources, from other from regions, towns, from state actors, that source information is really clearly cited so that the public and the board can recognize it and seek additional information or additional testimony from those sources. And we have the time, we've got the schedule, we have the time to put those people before the select board and before the public to have those conversations if necessary. Okay, I'm going to hear just one more and then we're going to go to final comments from the board.
It's a question about what you were just talking about.
Yes.
I think every one of you has the right to call up whoever you want to call.
Agreed.
You talk to constituents about issues before you on the board. What's the difference between that and what Fish just asked? I mean, in a general sense, if you want to call a fire department up wherever and just pick their brain, I think that's fine. I certainly believe that's fine to do. I certainly couldn't do it as three of you, but people talk to you people all the time advocating for X, Y, and Z. And, when they see you in the public or they call you on the phone, send you an email, a text. So I think that's perfectly fine if you want to do your own homework to just say, well, I spoke to someone and this is what they said. So the more you can inform yourself, go for it.
Okay. So, board, we've got a motion before us. We've heard a lot from the public. Is there any additional questions or comments on the proposed EMS transition project plan that's been presented for us? Seeing none, in that case, Peter has made a motion to accept the parallel track Fire-EMS transition project plan as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item 7B, which is to include the Juneteenth on the town's municipal holiday schedule. So I think I'm also going to turn this over to John.
Yes. Thank you. So 2 years ago, Juneteenth was declared a federal holiday to commemorate the end of legal slavery in the United States. There was a Brattleboro connection with 17 African-American soldiers from our town who were in Texas on June 19th, 1865, as part of the campaign to free the remaining enslaved Americans in that region. That was the basis of the Juneteenth celebration and why it's on June 19th, because the last Americans were freed in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865. For those reasons, we think it's appropriate, and the staff are recommending that we make this a local holiday as well, with a public celebration as a small step to promote racial justice and have that on the minds of people in our town.
Great. Board members, questions, comments?
Embrace it. I'm 100%.
Great.
Makes me happy.
Yeah.
I embrace it 110%.
So let the record reflect that
115.
Franz accepts it 10% more than Peter.
Is there a motion related to this?
Yes, there is. Thank you. Franz, would you like to give us a motion?
I'd be happy to if written here. Oh, yes, the following motion. I move that we recognize and add Juneteenth, parentheses, June 19th, to the town's municipal holiday schedule and to develop a program for public celebration.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Franz. So we've heard from a couple board members. Do you want to speak a little bit more to the public celebration?
Oh, yes. So one thing that we were proposing is that the town staff idea committee that is focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility work with interested parties in the town to put together a program for a public celebration. And we were suggesting that we put a budget of up to $1,000 towards that to be able to support that type of a celebration.
Excellent.
Yep.
Great.
Great. Daniel, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on it before. Okay. Yep. No, I think this is great. I'm actually really happy to see it. And yeah, I think I'm looking forward to hearing more about what that public celebration sort of turns into as we get closer to the holiday. So I'll open it up for any public comment. I don't see any on Zoom, and anybody in the room?
Ian,
Seeing none. Liz?
I just want to mention that the first time when we had the Civil War Monument reconnection was a really nice celebration. And that's a nice precedent for celebrations to follow.
To like occur there. Yeah. Yeah. And for those who are not familiar, the town last Juneteenth sort of opened the sort of corrective plaque that now sits accompanying the Civil War monument that's on the Common. And it looks great. I actually just ate a burrito like right next to it last night. And yeah, it's just like really kind of, it's really good.
Interesting way to present that, Ian.
Yeah, it does look really
Was that chicken burrito or was it veggie? I mean,
but and it was on Juneteenth. So I think that is a really good suggestion, Liz. Thank you. Does the rest of the board feel okay with that?
Your burrito? Or?
No, with the idea that maybe a public celebration that's being
Yes.
proposed here could happen around the monument.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, and I don't see any hands in the room either. So board. Franz has made a motion to recognize and add Juneteenth, June 19th to the town's municipal holiday schedule and to develop a program for public celebration. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to new business agenda item 7C, which is the cemetery ordinance change first reading. I'm going to invite Brian up to the special table. And do I need to open a public hearing?
Oh, boy.
I think it's
yes, I think.
it.
yeah. Okay. So, and as you approach the table, I am now officially opening a public meeting to hear the first reading. I'll hand it over.
Great. So I'm here tonight as the chair of the town cemetery committee. We've been working on a project for a number of years now to open an area of Morningside Cemetery for natural green burials. Green burials are burials without embalming, without vaults, and without coffins. People are shrouded and buried. The plots are wider to allow for subsidence as natural processes occur. And we had almost finalized that language for the ordinance when we were approached by a representative of the Muslim community in Brattleboro, and we're told that the orientation of the plots in the cemetery are inappropriate for Muslim burial. So otherwise, the requirements were similar to natural green burial, and we thought, why not combine these, reorientate those plots in the section intended for natural burial, and allow everybody in the town to have a chance for dignified burials in conformance with their religious and spiritual practices. So that's what's reflected in the proposed language. And then as a minor addendum, there's been an increased cost in corner markers, and we're proposing increasing the charge for plots to reflect that increased cost.
Great. Thank you very much. Board, questions, comments on the first reading? Peter?
Sorry, yeah. So this would just, would this cover all religions that want to, I guess, bury somebody in this fashion then?
Yeah. It's intended to be inclusive and meet the needs of folks who currently haven't been taken into account.
Liz?
Brian, are there state laws that apply to this that you had to make sure were acceptable?
It's an acceptable practice. We did go to a cemetery association to make sure that it was standard practice. We looked to Meeting House Cemetery for their regulations, and then Bob did look them over.
Thank you.
Nice.
So it seems that there would be a need at times for a wintertime burial. I guess that's a religious restriction on the length of time until someone is actually buried. I believe that's also true of Orthodox Judaism, although I don't know for sure. But my question is really just a curiosity. How do you do that when the ground is frozen? You just need to try harder, or what do you do?
So the cemeteries are managed by Parks and Recreation, and Carol and her crew have arrangements with the companies that do excavation. They enter from the Morningside condos and go on that pathway, and that takes it to the Jewish cemetery. This proposed area is between Morningside Commons and the Jewish cemetery, so it would also be accessed in the same way. And then, of course, arranging for that is on the group arranging the funeral, and it's done in coordination with Carol.
Thank you. Any other?
It's just, if the ground is frozen, what do you do?
Apparently the equipment can take care of it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
So the individual who who came to the cemetery committee about the Islamic burials and the lack of the town having an appropriately oriented burial sites for that. So that to me sounds like municipal government functioning, that somebody was able to access a committee that handles a function, and then that was able to be reflected in work done by the committee, and then that's now before the select board. Is that accurate, or?
Yes, I hope we've been responsive. Mr. Chaudhry is here tonight.
No. Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you a quick question? Thank you. I'm just curious, did you find it easy to be able to kind of know who to talk to?
Yes.
And yep.
I'm very familiar with the town, so I know that.
Yep.
And Brian and the other people in the town clerk's office have been very, very approachable, very helpful.
Good.
And immediately reacted to our request. And that's why I came in, first of all, to thank you, Professor Ahmed Latif, who lives in Putney, but has been teaching at Marlborough, has had some input in this as well. And he wanted to say that the response of the community to the Muslim needs is palpable. So I wanted to use that word. I've always felt this. I've been a member of the community for on and off for over 60 years. So we are very grateful. And I think I'll be the first one to go. So we need this very quickly.
No, I doubt it. Not at all.
Can I
Doesn't hurt to be
have
prepared.
input on this while I'm here?
Oh, of course, please.
We pretty much follow the Orthodox Jewish rituals also. Same thing, bury by the end of the day, if you can. And I noticed I live right in front of the sort of St. Michael's Catholic Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, our boys had said, we just tip you over when you're gone. But this is much better. I believe there've been some burials in the winter there too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. They've been able to dig into the ground and do that. So that's easy.
Okay.
Second part was the orientation is the only thing that really matters in that sense. It really doesn't. It actually really doesn't matter Nobody's going to worry about it. It's just customary and social behavior. That's all.
Mhm.
I had one question. Could we have a name for the cemetery?
So I suggested that it be called the Cedar Plot. Just have this-
Ahmed suggested a very interesting name because we're right next to the Jewish cemetery, something that binds us with the Jewish brothers and sisters. Rod al Salam, the Garden of Peace, Shalom Salam. We thought it'd be very nice that two sister communities are right next to each other. It's open to everybody. That's the beauty of it. Open to everybody. There's no question of faiths dividing us. If you can, it'd be grateful. It really doesn't matter again.
Okay.
So we suggested cedar just as a placeholder, and this seems
That's
a lot
fine.
more meaningful.
Yeah.
So I hope the board would consider that and accept that change.
So, board,
So is it possible to enter that in as a name in this first reading?
I was just about to ask that. I think we can. Usually the reason you do 2 readings is because there can be like not really substantive changes, and a name change is something that's not as substantive as something else. And so that gives the public an opportunity now to come back at a second reading and comment on this minor change. If the board supports that modification to what's before us.
And can we just enter that in, or does that need a formal?
If the 5 of us are sort of in agreement on that,
I think it's a beautiful suggestion.
agreed.
Yeah.
Other board members, Franz, you?
It sounds great to me. I think the period of public comment is the most important aspect of making a change at this point. So as long as that's appropriate, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and John, we're within. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely. We'll modify and we'll make sure that we get everything sort of correctly put into the amendment to section 19-9 to reflect that change in the language for the title of the cemetery. Daniel?
Perhaps Mr. Chowdhury will send us it in writing so we can make sure that the
I shall.
spelling is accurate.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
I like the idea of being open to everybody. That's just wonderful. It's part of the community. Dr. Latif asked, would Muslims in the surrounding areas also be able to dump the bones?
I'm looking to Brian on that one.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The cemetery is open to all.
That's wonderful because there's nothing around for 100 miles.
Oh, wow.
So this really would be absolutely marvelous.
But I think we should agree, dumping bones should be left out of the first reading.
Great.
One last one, sir.
Yes, of course.
The reason for the north-south orientation is that it's south-north, head is to the south. So we turn the heads towards Mecca, the face towards Mecca when we're buried. And the question I had was, could we have permission at some point to put a small marker or something to show the orientation towards Mecca? I noticed that the other cemeteries have some very nice monuments in various places, something that's not too loud or.
Yeah.
So I think that's outside of ordinance language. Each of the different sections does have some sort of marker, typically with the name carved into it. Generally, they're a stone. Certainly.
Would that just be then the orientation of a marker?
It could certainly.
That would work very well, actually.
Yeah. I think that actually might fall within just the realm of the town manager because that's just town property.
Okay.
And might not even be a select board.
We can raise it up with the town manager.
Yep.
But the naming and the marker could be combined.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
Excellent.
We thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I interrogated you. So thank you for coming up and letting
I'm
me answer
grateful.
some questions.
Welcome to my wake.
Okay. So is there any other questions or comments, board? Seeing none. So there isn't a motion here, which is why we didn't make one, because it's just the first reading. So In that case, Brian, I just want to thank you for your work and the work of the cemetery committee for bringing this really good work and important work. And I also want to thank town staff for what's been reported as being very receptive to a suggestion from the community and a good one. And I'm really glad to see it reflected in something that's come before the select board.
We're really happy to be able to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Brian.
you very much.
Great. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to new business agenda item D, the agricultural loan changes and improvements. And I think Stephen, here he comes.
Okay. He knows.
Down the march.
He knows
And
what's
Liz, see what time it is?
I know where I belong.
Look
tonight.
Look at that.
going. Good night.
Beautiful stuff.
What up? Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. I can introduce this if you're comfortable with it. Just a little background.
It's more important if you're comfortable with it.
Oh, very. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Then please do.
So we're here to talk about a loan fund that's been in existence from about 1985 in support of our farm system. It's been an objective of the town to change this for some time. It was listed in the town plan a number of years ago. And the reason for doing so is that the loan fund went unused for quite some time. It was set up to protect real estate from being gobbled up and have farmland turned into other uses. Since then, the pressures that farmers in the food system have faced have changed. And so we've seen a need to change the fund and make it more applicable for more broad uses and for a wider, diverse array of people who could use it. So not just farms, but people in the food farm system more broadly. How do we get those farmed goods to our markets locally? Who's the local distributors, those kinds of folks. So I could get into the specifics of it, but this has gone through a process with you all already, from being in the town plan to coming up before representative town meeting for an article to change. And so from there, the Agricultural Advisory Committee really wrote the policies and procedures that you're looking at here today over 6 months ago. And since then, that's moved through town staff, mainly working with finance and the legal teams to make sure that everything we're putting forward is sound and can actually be enacted. And so here we are bringing it back to you in its final form, and we think it's much more useful and applicable to the needs of the food farm system today. So I can pause there and invite any questions that you all may have at this point.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Stephen, for the presentation. Board members, questions, comments? Oh, a motion. Thank you. I'll take a motion first. I can
do this one.
Yes.
I move to authorize the newly reformulated agricultural loan fund.
Daniel's made a motion, board. Additional comments or questions?
I
Yep,
just wonder
Dan.
if we want to hear from Stephen a bit about the details of how it has been newly reformulated.
Yeah,
sure. So to that point, I can speak to, as I said before, it was really about real estate. And so a lot of the people that gave input on this were primarily farmers, talking about the need for capital expenses to be covered and other auxiliary expenses related to their farming system, farming operations. But also the size of these loans shifted. The timeline and the process, the terms of the loans was shifted a little bit to be less arduous for the size of the loan that we're giving out. These are $7,500, not a huge amount. And again, the potential applicants have been expanded greatly. So people like a farmer's market or the co-op or Food Connects or a value-added food company could apply if they're trying to scale up and get the next piece of equipment to make their, let's just say goat milk caramels, right, at scale. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to aim for with this. The only changes that happened between the Ag Committee and the Legal and Finance revisions, the Ag Committee wanted to try and instill some option for a loan to be completely forgiven and almost act like a grant in some case. But that's up to the discretion of the Loan Committee. And that could always happen according to their discretion. So at first it looked a little bit like a loan plus grant program, or a loan that would almost be expected to be forgiven program. But after going through finance and legal, we turned it into a more traditional looking loan program that could be forgiven according to discretion of staff and whatever status of the fund at the time. So that's those are the broad strokes, I'd say.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Daniel. I think that's helpful. Franz?
I had a brief discussion with John about this yesterday, and there's kind of a hidden problem, I think, which is the current functioning of the Ag Committee. In particular, since the committee that gives out the loans is supposed to have a representative from the Ag Committee. If there's no functioning Ag Committee, I wonder, I mean, could they still do that based on the other? I mean, it's just, we wouldn't quite be fulfilling what it says here, that the committee shall have a maximum of 7 members consisting of at least 1 agricultural advisory committee member is on that list. If it doesn't have that, is it legitimately constructed committee, and can we actually move forward, or do we also simultaneously or as a prerequisite have to address the issue of who's on the Ag Committee and how its functioning is going?
I can respond to that in a technical way.
Yeah.
That subcommittee would be run as all committees are run according to Robert's Rules of Order, requiring a quorum and a majority. If one member, in this case, that particular representative, weren't there, there still would be the potential to hold a quorum and operate that committee. But it's also up to your discretion if you would like to send this back and see that piece just simply removed. But that to me feels like the most important piece of the work to make sure we keep operable. Getting this loan fund to be operable again is the main goal. Part of what we're talking around is the Ag Committee's history of having a hard time maintaining its membership. The reason being farmer schedules. Often the committee would go for months, especially during the summer, not meeting just because of the schedules of the people that were involved. And for quite some time, it was required that farmers be the main participants on that committee. We've tried to continue that ethos, and we've run into the same problems. And at this point, there are, I believe, only 2 active members. I'm checking in on a third I haven't been able to get in touch with, but out of 7, we don't even have enough, for a quorum at this point for that committee.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, one of those people could be appointed to this subcommittee and fulfill that role. And it's really up to you all how you'd like to see this piece of the fund move forward at this point in time, and probably a larger discussion around the Ag Committee and what to do about that.
Yeah, Liz.
What if we just said may have a member on the Ag Committee so that it would be recommended but not required?
Sounds like a creative solution. Stephen, thoughts on that? Did you hear the?
I think that's great. May not mean much in the end, right? But it keeps that intention there. Another piece I know that's been hard for that committee to operate is all the people who are farmers and on the Ag Committee also want to apply for this fund, and so they cannot be on the committee themselves. So that winnows down that membership to other people. So I think that keeping the encouragement but not making it a requirement could definitely be an option if you see fit.
Mm-hmm.
Is it necessary?
It's
to
not.
have
It's
the
not.
committee?
We could just not have it at all. But
I mean,
it sort of speaks to, as Stephen was saying, holding it to the purpose and having someone from a subcommittee on. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of our decision. So I think it's come to us recommended this way from town staff. So this is the way that town staff would like it to.
Well, it came that way from the Ag Committee before it really dissolved and fell apart. Right. This was 6 months previous where everyone was still being able to get together.
Yeah.
So we didn't anticipate this moment of having this shortcoming.
Can then we shrink the size of the committee to make it easier to conform?
I think it could be just one person. Brett, is that, the ag committee itself.
Yeah, the committee itself.
That was done recently.
That was done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would just rather have it be, with the May and leave the ag committee as kind of a separate issue for the select board to determine whether or not it should be dissolved or not.
Yeah.
Because it's problematic as Stephen has outlined with membership. So if we keep this action separate from what constitutes the ag committee, I think we'd be in better shape.
Franz?
I'd like to propose an amendment.
Please.
To the language here. It's under the section Food Farm Loan Review Subcommittee membership.
I'm going to want a page number.
It's on page 26 of 57 in your notebook. So the underlined sentence there is the committee shall have maximum of 7 members and consisting of at least. And I would propose changing that line to the committee shall have a maximum of 7 members and may consist of, within the same language underneath it.
Daniel?
Maybe should rather than may.
Shall means it must. Shall is must.
I think may.
May.
I think
Does that capture sort of what you were thinking? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one thought I have would be if, depending on sort of if we come back about the ag committee at another time, depending on what the board's decision on anything like that would be, we could have the ag committee, if it gets reconstituted, could look at this again, and they could come back to the select board with a sort of alternative if they don't like the may language.
Always an option. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll reformulate this another time
Yep.
down the road at some point.
Yep. I think it's good. I like it. Can I have the head nods on the friendly amendment to the motion? Yes. Okay. So we're considering it with the may language under the Food Farm Loan Review Subcommittee section on page 26 of 57 of the backup material. Any other questions or comments, board? And I'll check for public participation. Seeing none. So I don't see anyone on Zoom, and just double checking the mass of humanity that's in the room.
There is
a lot of people here. But
there is.
Oh, we do have a hand. It's Gary.
Okay, I'm working on the camera part, people. I'm pretty much sure you guys know how my face looks. So
that is true.
Well, I just wanted to be thankful and thank the people who had participated in the ag committee at that time, and thanks Stephen. We had a good run. This is my second time being on the ag committee, and I think it's a wise choice to hibernate this for now until we can figure out another strategy or another way of navigating this. We can brainstorm that down the road, which is good. It was fruitful, bountiful, and we accomplished quite a bit. And I'm looking for more seeds to plant out there so we can get the harvest going again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. And I appreciate all of those farming sort of terminology that you use in that comment. So, well done. Okay, I don't see any other hands. So board, Daniel, no, who made it?
Yes.
Daniel, thank you. Daniel made a motion, which was, had a friendly amendment by Franz, to authorize the newly reformulated agricultural loan fund as amended by Franz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate the presentation and all the hard work. You and the ag committee. All right. So we're going to move on to new business agenda item 7E, which is the committee appointments. So, board, this is, we approved our select board rules and rules of conduct a couple of meetings ago, which included the language for how we do committee appointments. I had reviewed those rules very closely to see if I could amend them or suggest amendments to make it easier to do this. And I really couldn't think of anything better, and apparently none of you could either. So we're still going to have this kind of clunky system, and I'm going to explain it because it's our first time doing it as the 2023-2024 Select Board. So we have 6 applicants for 2 positions on the Citizens Police Communications Committee. And we heard from 4 of those applicants this evening at 5:15. And we can consider all of them for appointment to these 2 vacancies, but we can only appoint 2 of them, unfortunately. So the way that we do it is we open nominations. We will hear from every board member who they want to nominate as a potential member of the CPCC. I will then close nominations, and then we will vote. And we will vote down the line of nominations. I'm going to write down the nominations and we'll vote down it. And we will go through all the names that are nominated. And if 2 members of the nomination of the people nominated have the most votes, then those are the 2 that are appointed. If there's a tie between more than 2, then the people who have not achieved enough votes to achieve the tie are removed from the list, and then we revote again. So let's say there were 5 members and 3 of them achieved 4 votes and the other 2 achieved 3 votes. The 2 that achieved 3 votes are gone. We move back to the 3 members and we revote again. We continue that process until we have 2 members, and those are the appointed committee members. I know it's a little clunky, but I think we'll get into it. I think the really important thing is you can vote for more than 2 people. You can vote for as many as you want, and you can nominate as many people as you want. So we could nominate all 6 people if you wanted to, and you can vote every single person. But if we all vote for all 6 of them, all 5 of us, then we'll be here all night, all voting until eventually the deadlock's broken and we decide on who we're going to appoint. So are there any questions on the procedure? Because I know it is a little complicated. I don't want to get a situation where people don't know how this works and are voting. So any questions? Yes.
I have the 2022 rules of conduct, and I would request of town staff that we have printed copies of the new ones so that we can put them in our binders for future meetings like this to refer back to.
Yeah. Okay. Good to go. Okay. So in that case, I'm going to open up the nominations for the CPC committee. Do I have any nominations? Daniel.
I would like to nominate Carla Fogg.
Carla has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Franz.
I'd like to nominate Johnny Lee Conroy.
Okay. Johnny Lee Conroy nominated. Other nominations? Liz?
I'd like to nominate Terry Martin.
Liz has nominated Terry Martin. Any other nominations? I will nominate Leslie.
Les.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Les McDonough. Any other nominations?
So one quick thing. So everybody just nominated one person. Is that how we?
No, you can nominate more than one. So if Daniel wants to nominate somebody else, they can. But
after each person, there is something in the rules about that.
Oh, that we should hear from everybody once. Okay, Peter, would you like to nominate?
Yep, Johnny Lee Conroy.
We've already nominated him.
Oh, so we need another?
Nope, we're not voting. We're just nominating. And then I will close out nominations and then we'll do the vote.
Okay.
So Daniel?
So like, for example, you could nominate one of the other people who applied, but who was not interviewed.
Currently, Daniel G. Hansen and Cassandra.
Not to do that.
Yeah.
But there's no requirement.
Yeah. Okay. So in that case, I'm going to close nominations. And again, now we're going to go into the voting. And you can vote for as many people as you want. We have 4 nominations. You can vote for all 4 of them as you want. And we will go through the voting as many times as it takes until we get 2 people who have the majority of the votes who get appointed. And after each round, if someone hasn't achieved a sufficient number of votes, they're eliminated and we vote again. Cool? Great. So we'll start with Carla Fogg. All those in favor of appointing Carla to the committee, please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. So that's going to be 4 votes for Carla. Okay, all those in favor of Johnny Lee Conroy to be appointed indicate with an aye.
Aye.
All right, that's
Aye.
going to be 4 votes. All those in favor of Terry Martin being appointed to the committee. Got 1. And all those in favor of Les McDonough being appointed indicate with an aye. That will be 2. And so, believe it or not, took only one run. It took longer to explain it. So in that case, with 4 votes each, Carla Fogg and Johnny Lee Conroy have been appointed to the CPCC committee. I want to thank everybody who applied. It's pretty great to have so many applicants who are qualified and want to be engaged. And I would encourage those who weren't appointed to apply for other committees or get engaged in other ways with the town. We really appreciate the immense volunteerism that comes from this community and helps make Brattleboro the best Brattleboro could be. Strong, even one might say.
It's the only brother.
It's the only Brattleboro. So thank you, and we'll make sure that we email all of the applicants tonight or tomorrow so they know who was appointed. With that, I believe we're going to. Yeah. So in that case, we're doing it a little differently this evening, and we're going to recess to executive session and to not take any action during or after executive session. But this is a 2-part motion board for moving into executive session. The first motion is that I move to find that premature public knowledge regarding contracts with EMS providers and collective bargaining units would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its negotiation strategy with EMS providers and members of collective bargaining units if it discusses the proposed items in the public. Are there any questions or discussion on the first motion? Nope. I see. Oh, Gary, is your hand just still up from before, or do you have a question?
Oh, okay. Here I go. Yeah, I had one quick question. I had to reapply because my term was up for CPC in June. So I don't know if my application, I put it out last week. So I don't know if it's going to come up again.
We've moved on from that item, so that's no longer relevant. But what I'll ask you to do is just send an email to the town manager, and we'll figure out what the issue was and hopefully rectify it.
Okay, I was going to try to slip it in there before it became non-germane, but thank you.
I apologize.
No, that's fine.
We don't really hear from public during the motion process.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
But thank you guys very much. Have a great night.
You too. Any further discussions? Okay, seeing none. So all those in favor of the first motion indicate with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's going to carry 5-0. So in that case, board, I move that we enter into executive session to discuss contracts and the collective bargaining under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A, and that invited into the executive session are the town manager, the assistant town manager, and the finance director. Oh, welcome. Is there any discussion, board? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. So we're going to recess to executive session to take no action.
Should Chris come as well?
Chris, we didn't invite Chris.